das Jokic-Video. Rusty Buck jetzt auch wieder mit einem Hit. Should Nikola Jokic win his third MVP in a row?
It's following his back-to-back MVP season somehow manages to be even more impressive than he's already shown himself to be. He is now averaging basically a triple-double on unbelievable efficiency, and the Denver Nuggets are the first seed in the Western Conference. Right now,
das ist, glaube ich, auch das erste Mal, seitdem er MVP wird, also seit 3 Seasons im Endeffekt, dass die Nuggets auf dem ersten sind.
the possibility of
ist schon krass, wie sich Schröder durchgesetzt hat. Und das stimmt auch, Bruder. Ich muss mal sagen, also seit diesem Jahr bin ich auch echt bei unseren deutschen Spielern. Davor habe ich die immer ein bisschen so mit Side-Eye angeguckt, ne? Aber mittlerweile Maxi Kleber, Dennis Schröder, Daniel Theis sind alles sehr, sehr wichtige Jungs. Und freue mich umso mehr, dass Dennis Schröder bei den Lakers halt überzeugen kann.
Nikola Jokic winning 3 MVPs in a row seems really, really possible. And
ganz kurze Frage, meint ihr, dass Nikola Jokic diese Season auch wieder MVP wird oder meint ihr irgendwer anders?
And this is something
Und wenn ja, dann wen?
that has not happened since Larry Bird did it himself in the 80s. So let's talk about Nikola Jokic.
Oder die Hose hat mich ganz kurz rausgekriegt. Ich denke so, was ist denn das für eine Frau? Es ist einfach Larry Bird.
His MVP case and the historic season that he is having. Before we begin today's video, I want to
Ja, so klein im Gegensatz zu anderen macht so Spaß zuzuschauen. Das stimmt, Digga, das stimmt.
talk about our sponsor.
Der hat halt brutale Technik, ne? Muss man dazu sagen. Dennis Schröder hat brutale Technik. Ohne Spaß. Das Ding ist, er ist halt als Deutscher in Amerika. Der wird auch immer ein bisschen komisch angeguckt, deswegen muss er sich ein bisschen mehr profilieren als andere Leute. Zum Glück hat er das geschafft. Nur schade, dass er diesen 84 Millionen Dollar Contract nicht mit den Lakers eingegangen ist und jetzt wieder da ist für weniger. Das ist halt wirklich ein bisschen ärgerlich, aber gut.
Simplest thing is really take a look at what Nikola Jokic's MVP numbers look like by comparison to what he is doing this season. If you look at Nikola Jokic's 2 MVP seasons, he averaged about 27 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists, and about 1.2 stocks. And he did this with a 65% true shooting percentage. Now, this year, Jokic is averaging 25 points and 11 rebounds, along with 9.9 assists, which is a career high. He is 0.1 assist away from averaging a 25-point triple-double, 2 stocks, and he has an unbelievable 70% true shooting percentage. For those of you who may not be aware, the average true shooting percentage in the league is somewhere around 57% last time I checked. It's somewhere in that ballpark. So Nikola Jokic is someone who is looked at as basically the offensive hub of his team and someone who's going to score 25 points a night, managing to put up those points while also shooting 13% better than league average is insane. What's even more insane is if you take a look at his 2-point percentage this year, because inside the 3-point arc, he is shooting 67% from the field. And given that only 2.3 of his shots are from outside of inside the 3-point line, aka behind the 3-point line, that means that Nikola Jokic is damn near shooting 70% on anything that's just not a 3. It's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous. The level of efficiency in which Nikola Jokic is playing is
ohne Spaß, Dope Night. Danke dafür, ey. Kuss, Bruder. Ohne Spaß.
off of the
Freut mich, dass du auch Spaß hier hast, Digga. Ne? Auch wenn 2K heute ein bisschen schwierig läuft. Und ich ein bisschen anders drauf bin als sonst, aber finde ich gut, ey.
charts. And I would personally argue that 25, 11, and 10 is better than the 27, 12, and 8 or whatever that he was averaging on, you know, still great efficiency, but worse. And
würde ich auch sagen, seine Statline dieses Jahr ist noch besser als letztes Jahr. Vielleicht ein bisschen weniger Punkte, dafür aber mehr Assists, mehr Stops als Steals und so. Und bessere True Shooting, obwohl sein True Shooting schon off the roof is.
Thing that adds to his MVP case, and I would argue adds far more significantly than the numbers do, even if that's what I started with. The main argument you would make is if Nikola Jokic was MVP the last 2 years, while his team was not a top 3 seed in the conference, how do you deny him winning MVP when his team is the first seed in the Western Conference?
Wenn es danach geht, hat er vollkommen recht, musst du eigentlich Jokic MVP geben, weil er nur besser geworden ist und sein Team nur noch besser gemacht hat. Aber als jemand, der schon 2 MVPs hintereinander gewonnen hat, dann das dritte noch danach zu gewinnen. Also für ihn ist dieses Jahr viel, viel schwerer, MVP zu gewinnen, als für alle anderen Spieler. Also wirklich jetzt. Auch für Janis und so, auch wenn der auch schon MVP geworden ist. Für ihn ist gerade am schwersten. Jetzt bereit machen, man sieht sich beim nächsten Stream oder später. Oh, ein Dope Night, Digga. Freut mich, dass du da warst. Ohne Spaß, Digga. Und viel Spaß hier, ne? Macht ihn entspannen.
Because the argument that the crowd of people that hates Nikola Jokic, which is more large than I think it has any right to be, but whatever, that particular group of people,
Wer kann denn Nikola Jokic nicht ab?
their argument was always his team's not winning enough. His team doesn't have a good enough record. They didn't even win 50 wins. How does he win MVP, you know? But at the same time, you can't make that argument now, so what's left? Can't really say his stats. The weird argument they made in the past was that he was just like an advanced stats guy, which is ludicrous because I just said a second ago that in his MVP years, he was averaging 27, 12, and 8 on 65% true shooting. So that's filling the box score and it's doing it efficiently. But even if you wanted to make that argument, then you sure as hell are not going to contend with a 25-point triple-double. So then you just have to look at if Jokic's case is as
Muss man ins Casino das Blackjack-Finale gewinnen. Oha, Bruder, dann auf jeden Fall viel Erfolg und viel Glück, ne? Ja, bin ja mal gespannt. Lass mich auf jeden Fall auf dem Laufenden, wie es gelaufen ist. Brauchen noch einen für Pro EM 5 gegen 5. Chat, wenn noch einer am Start ist, Jan sucht noch jemanden für Tuba.
Strong as it is, the only way that he doesn't win MVP is really 2 factors. One, there is a legitimate case that's better than his, and that's not out of the realm of possibility. The MVP race is definitely still very much up for grabs. But the other one is voter fatigue, and that's kind of what I've been saying about this entire ordeal, the idea of Jokic winning 3 MVPs.
Habe ich doch auch gesagt, Digga. Das dritte Mal MVP jetzt für ihn gewinnen, ist einfach zu
From the very beginning. Because while me personally, I don't think that, I don't think Jokic shouldn't win MVP because he won it over the last 2 years. I also understand that the way that fans work, the way that media works, there is such thing as voter fatigue. It's the same reason that Karl Malone has 2 MVPs when he should have 0 because he should have never been in the league. But the one in 99 is the only one that he should have had. 1998 should have gone to Michael Jordan, but voter fatigue is what it is. And the reason especially that people seem to want to deny Jokic this MVP is because winning 3 MVPs in a row has only been done by 3 players previous to Jokic if he does indeed do it.
Ja, vor allem, man stellt ihn ja dann, oder bei vielen Leuten ist dann der Gedanke, dass man ihn dann auf die gleiche Stufe stellt, wie die Leute, die 3 MVPs hintereinander gewonnen haben. Und das vielleicht einfach nicht möchten, Digga, weil er nicht der typische Basketballspieler ist. Hey.
The 3 players to receive this achievement were Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell in the 60s, and Larry Bird did it in the 80s. Since then, though, no one has done it. Any player that
Und irgendwo würde man den Jokic das Gesicht der NBA heute dann einfach geben, wenn man ihm das dritte MVP gibt, ne?
won back-to-back MVP.
Weil es keiner seit damals Larry Bird geschafft hat.
MVPs would be denied
Nicht
a
mal
third
MJ.
one, even like as I previously mentioned, in years where it was potentially worthy of consideration, like Michael Jordan in 1998. So I do understand that voter fatigue is kind of just an inherent part of the nature of how these awards go, and that's part of the reason that a lot of people don't see that much value in the MVP award for a player's legacy. Another point that I could see that some people believe, even though I strongly disagree, is I know there's a very strong subsection of NBA fans that think that Nikola Jokic is fairly overrated. They're the same crowd of people that, as I mentioned, acted as though his box score was not ridiculously impressive. So they might feel as though really like he's gonna be the first player that we give 3 since Larry Bird, even though arguably Michael Jordan should have, LeBron probably should have at some point, something along those lines. Is it really that fair to give it to Nikola Jokic? I hate that line of thinking personally. I really think it is awful to deny players awards just based on the fact that in the past other players were denied the award, and that's an argument that I find to be far too common. So with that, ignoring moving
Ja, aber wenn du irgendwie fair bleiben willst, Digga, dann musst du halt eigentlich so
past, not necessarily ignoring, because it's always going to be a factor. Moving past the voter
Weil, wenn es damals ein Faktor war, also von wegen Voting Fatigue, Digga, dann muss es ja heute auch ein Faktor sein. Ist ja ganz einfach, Bruder. Kann ja nicht sein, Bruder. Es wird ja einfacher jetzt, oder was? So, das ist vielleicht der Gedanke.
Fatigue aspect of it. Let's just talk about every other player's MVP case briefly and why I believe that Nikola Jokic's case is just simply better. In Boston with Jason Tatum, he honestly probably has the strongest case that's not Jokic. Another one might actually be Luka Doncic as well. But overall, I definitely feel as though Jokic's numbers are more impressive than what both Tatum and Luka are doing. I would argue that Luka's are maybe a little bit more impressive, but I just give Jokic a little bit of that edge for the efficiency. Not suggesting that either Luka nor Tatum are not putting up ridiculous stats and not doing so on good to also ridiculous efficiency. But I just like Nikola Jokic's box score like 5% more, and that's like the most subjective thing in the world. What you view as a great box score can depend on the person. I think all three of them are amazing, but I think Jokic slightly edges out in that department, and his team's winning more games than I would argue the Dallas Mavericks roster is actually not that much worse. It's worse built and worse structurally, but talent-wise, I actually think they're somewhat similar levels, and Nikola Jokic's team is the first seed, Luka's is the fifth. And with the Celtics, of course, they are the first seed in the Eastern Conference, and they have 2 more wins than the Denver Nuggets do. But really, I don't think that difference is significant enough, and if we're going to make a help argument, I definitely think if we're looking at these 3 as the top 3 candidates, Jason Tatum has the most help around him. We also, of course, have to give mention to Giannis. However, me personally, I think Giannis is having a down year, which is not something we've seen him do ever, really. He just improves every year, but this year he finally really isn't, and the Bucks have been struggling quite a bit lately, so I don't really know if he has the strongest case right now.
Ja, ich glaube, bei Jan ist es halt einfach so, dass die Leute mittlerweile rausgefunden haben, wie man ihn verteidigen, was man gegen ihn machen kann.
Now, it's got weak footing. Philadelphia is doing well, but as of right now, I think Joel Embiid has missed a little bit too much time to really be in consideration, but as the year progresses, he could find himself more and more in that conversation, assuming that he manages to maintain his health. Kevin Durant in Brooklyn, probably going to be the same thing. He's just now starting rehab for an injury that kept him out for a month, or will keep him out for a month, so I think
ja, ein Monat in Basketball ist halt nicht so fußballmäßig 4 Spiele weg, sondern es sind dann halt gleich 15 Spiele, die er gefehlt hat. Und das ist halt echt nicht wenig.
I think that's going to prevent him from winning it. Don't really think Ja is going to do it, and I don't really think Zion's going to do it. So at that point, it's really feeling like it's going to come down to the original 3 that I mentioned, Luka, Tatum, and Jokic. And from there, it's going to come down to pretty much anybody's personal preference. I just hope and pray that when it comes to award season, when the voting is going through, that the media and the people responsible for voting aren't giving the thought, well, I can't pick Jokic for the 3rd year in a row. Because if Jokic has the best case for MVP this year, the 2 years that happened before it have nothing to do with it. The 2 years that happened before it are irrelevant. How did he perform this year? Did he perform like an MVP this year? Did he perform like the player that deserves MVP this year? If so, you give it to him. No question.
Ja, du musst aber einfach diese Voter-Fatigue mit einberechnen. Wenn MJ damals sie deswegen nicht bekommen, dann kannst du nicht Nikola Jokic heute sagen, ja Bruder, aber er spielt trotzdem noch besser. Ist ja schön und gut, Digga, aber musst du mitberechnen.
Unfortunately though, if I had to predict, I would say they might take that away from him. But Jokic is one of the most absurd offensive players I've ever seen. Some people would argue Jokic is not the quality of talent to deserve 3 consecutive MVPs, but I could not disagree more. I think Jokic, by the time he is done playing this game, is going to retire as, at the bare minimum, one of the 25 best to have ever done this, and probably one of the 5 best offensive players, period, in the history of the sport. And the MVPs that he's been winning has only been a reflection of the incredible talent that he has. Anyways, that all said, is Jokic going to win 3 consecutive MVPs? I don't know. It'd be really cool. I'm kind of rooting for it, but also I did make the prediction that Tatum would win it, so I'm kind of also wanting that to happen. All I know is if by the end of the year, Jokic really feels like he has the best case and he doesn't win it, I'm going to be a little bit annoyed. That said, well, that's it. That's the end of the video. Shout out to...
Ja, wie gesagt, Digga, ne? Also du musst Voter-Fatigue mit einberechnen. er hat halt unnormale Jahre. Das, was er da auf die Beine stellt, hat wirklich noch kein anderer Spieler so gemacht. Musst du wirklich, das geht halt nicht, ne? Dass MJ keine 3 MVPs gewonnen hat wegen Voter-Fatigue und dann Jokic die gewinnt. Weil Voter-Fatigue auf einmal nicht mehr ein Ding ist. Finde ich sehr, sehr schwierig.